In a quiet city park, a powerful millionaire believed he had seen everything, until he met a little deaf girl sitting alone on a bench. She couldn't speak, she couldn't hear. But with one silent note, she spoke louder than the world. When he offered her his credit card to buy anything she wanted, she didn't choose toys or candy. What she returned with changed his heart forever. This is not just a story about wealth. It's a story about loneliness, kindness, and the silent cry that even money cannot hear. Stay with me till the end, because this little girl taught a millionaire and all of us a lesson America must never forget. It was a calm afternoon in the city park, the kind of day when the world looked peaceful, but people carried storms within them. Jackson, a 36-year-old millionaire, walked through the path with heavy steps, dressed in silence far louder than any voice. He wasn't looking for anyone. He wasn't looking for anything. He only came to escape his own mansion filled with echoing emptiness. But then he stopped. A little girl sat alone on a wooden bench. No toys, no guardian, no movement, just her small figure pressed into the corner of the bench like she was trying to disappear from the world. Her shoes were worn, her clothes were simple, and in her lap rested a small notebook with a pencil, clutched tightly in her fragile hands. Her name, he would soon discover, was Ashley. Jackson's brows pulled together. Children that young are rarely alone. Something felt wrong. There was no crying, no calling out, just silent breathing. He approached slowly, cautiously, as if stepping into a story far greater than himself. He sat beside her, maintaining distance. He expected her to look at him, to flinch, to show any sign of fear. But she didn't. She didn't even turn. She kept staring down at her shoes, her tiny legs swinging ever so slightly, not in play, but in thought. Jackson spoke gently. "Are you lost, little one?" His voice was unusually soft, but she did not react. No blink, no lift of her head. It was as if his voice didn't exist. Confused, he leaned a bit closer. "Are you okay?" Still nothing. Not even a breath changed. Then slowly, in stiff motion, she lifted her head, just enough for her eyes to meet his. Those eyes. They held no tears, no panic. They held something far deeper. A quiet pain, like someone who had learned to suffer without making a sound. She studied his face, not in fear, but in silent question. Then, with delicate hands, she opened her notebook and wrote. Her pencil scratched softly against the paper. She turned it toward him. "I can't hear, I'm waiting, but no one comes." Jackson felt something inside him lurch. He didn't know why, but his breath caught. She was deaf. A 5-year-old girl alone, waiting for someone who may never return. He tried using his hands, pointing to her stomach, questioning if she was hungry. She blinked once. He pointed around, asking if she was lost. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She only stared. It wasn't sadness in her eyes. It was a deeper wound, loneliness, a loneliness no child should ever know. For a moment, Jackson forgot he was a millionaire. Forgotten were the luxury watches, the polished shoes, the guarded heart. In that instant, he was simply a man, and she was simply a child, both aching in different languages. She looked back down at her shoes, as if used to being unseen, as if men like him always walked away. But Jackson didn't move. Something in her silence pulled him. Something in her stillness shouted louder than words. He realized then, she didn't need someone to talk. She needed someone to stay. And for the first time in years, Jackson stayed. Jackson had never planned this moment. He had never spoken to a deaf child before, never even understood the language of silence. But something unexplainable stirred within him, a pull stronger than logic, stronger than pride. He reached into his coat and pulled out his sleek black credit card, a symbol of power, privilege, and choices without limits. With slow, deliberate movement, he placed it into Ashley's tiny palm. her fingers barely wrapped around its edge. She looked down at it, then at him, confusion swirling in her gentle eyes. No child had ever been handed something like this without rules, without instructions. He pointed softly toward the nearby row of stores. The food stall to the left, a small toy shop to the right, a clothing kiosk in between. No voice was used. No words were needed. He didn't want to buy her something himself. He wanted to see her choice. This was not a game, not a trick. It was something far more dangerous, an emotional test even he didn't fully understand. Millions of dollars at his fingertips, yet he had never been unsure of a single purchase. Until now, when the decision belonged to a hungry, lonely 5-year-old girl. Ashley didn't move. She studied the card with wide eyes, as if it were made of pure gold. For a long moment, she sat there motionless, breathing lightly. The wind rustled the edges of her notebook on the bench. She did not smile, she did not gasp, she did not rush. That alone startled him. Most children, rich or poor, would leap at the chance, grab the largest toy, the sweetest candy. But Ashley hesitated. Her gaze lifted slowly, searching Jackson's face, not for permission, but for reason. In her eyes lived a silent question. "Why would you trust me?" He held her gaze. He didn't blink. He gave a single nod, a nod that meant, "I trust you, little one. Go." She stood, not eagerly, not fearfully, just calmly. She clutched the card with both hands, as if she held something fragile, fragile enough to break her if she misused it. No smile appeared, no spark of childish greed, only thought, only care. Jackson watched her small figure walk away, not skipping, not running. Each slow step she took carved something heavy into his heart. He didn't know why it mattered so much. Yet his heartbeat pounded with questions. What would she choose? Candy to taste joy? Toys to feel normal? Clothes to feel seen? His breaths grew shallow. It was absurd. He could buy an entire store with one phone call, yet here he was, anxious over a single girl's decision. He folded his hands together, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on her tiny silhouette drifting toward the stores. For the first time in years, Jackson felt something sharper than loneliness. Fear. Fear that perhaps she would choose nothing, or worse. Fear that she might never return. She disappeared beyond the corner. His chest tightened. Minutes passed, stretching like hours. Every rustle of leaves, every distant voice, every shifting shadow made him glance up, hoping it was her. He had given her freedom, but freedom was dangerous. Would she return? Would she run? Would she remember him? Jackson leaned back, staring at the path she walked. He had no faith in humanity. But for some reason, he had faith in her. A girl who never heard a word, yet spoke louder through silence. And so he waited, a millionaire tested not by wealth but by trust in the smallest soul he had ever met. Minutes ticked by like heavy stones falling into a well. 10 minutes, 15, 20. Each second pulled at Jackson's nerves. He wasn't used to waiting, not for deals, not for people, not for anything. Yet here he sat, edgy and restless, waiting for a child he had known for barely an hour. The park felt different now, less peaceful, more hollow. The bench beside him, once merely wood and steel, now felt like a promise he silently made. To be there when she returned. If she returned. Finally, he saw her. Tiny footsteps, slow as always. No running, no swinging arms. In her hands, a brown paper bag. No colorful boxes, no shiny wrappers, no stuffed animals peeking from the top. Just plain, simple brown. She walked back to the bench, eyes lowered, as if unsure if she had done well or disappointed him. Carefully, almost reverently, she placed the bag between them, like an offering. She didn't look at him yet. She just pushed it forward with both hands. Jackson felt a strange tremor in his fingers as he reached inside. His eyes widened. 2 sandwiches, 1 water bottle. A tiny first aid kit. Nothing for play, everything for care. His breath caught. He looked at her, confused, speechless. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, waiting. Not proudly, not nervously, just silently. She picked up her notebook and began to write, her pencil moving slower this time, like each word carried weight. She turned the page toward him. "For you. You look lonely." His chest caved. He blinked, stunned. No one had ever looked at him and seen loneliness. People saw his cars, his watches, his tailored suits, his indifference, but this child saw right through him. She wrote again, another line. She hesitated before showing it. "The bandages are for your hand. I saw the scratch." Instinctively, Jackson looked down at his knuckles. There it was, a faint, bleeding cut he had gotten earlier while opening a metal gate. He hadn't noticed. He didn't care, but she did. She, who heard no words, had seen his pain. He could no longer hide behind composure. Something inside him cracked. His throat burned, heavy with emotion he never allowed himself to feel. She didn't ask him for anything. She didn't use his card to fill her hunger or her dreams. Instead, she fed his emptiness. She didn't take. She didn't waste. She gave. Jackson tried to find words, but his mouth refused to open. Even if it did, what language could speak what she just expressed without sound? No child should understand loneliness. No child should understand wounds. Yet here she was, mending his. She slowly opened her sandwich and took a small bite, then nudged the second one toward him. Then she wrote, "You don't have to be alone." That was it. That was the moment something shattered inside him, not something weak, but something cold. The armor he wore for years, against trust, against love, against vulnerability. It cracked in the hands of a silent girl. He lowered his head, closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he wanted to cry. Not because of loss, but because someone so small had given him something so big. The sky above remained calm, but inside Jackson, a storm brewed. He had tasted the innocence of her choice, but now he needed to understand the silence she lived in. Carefully, awkwardly, he formed gestures with his hands, pointing to her chest, then around them. It wasn't perfect sign language, but she understood. "Where is your family?" She didn't answer right away. Her fingers gripped her pencil tighter, pressing into the pages of her notebook. Her breaths became shallow, and then, without looking at him, she wrote. Slow, heavy, bleeding words. "My mom left. My dad drinks. I stay here until he forgets to be angry." Jackson felt his vision blur, as if the world around him tilted. He was a man guarded by iron gates, marble floors, and silent hallways. She was a child guarded by nothing. No arms to hold her, no voice calling her home. She lived in pauses, in fear, in waiting. Until he forgets to be angry. Those words stabbed deeper than any scream could. He imagined her, standing at a doorway, waiting for fists to sleep, waiting for rage to fade, waiting to simply exist without punishment. A 5-year-old, deaf, alone, still brave enough to stay gentle. Jackson swallowed, but his throat felt like glass. He had spent years avoiding emotions, closing doors, ending conversations, pushing away anyone who got too close. Yet here, with this child, he was powerless. He gestured again, not with hands this time, but with eyes. Confused, desperate, searching. "Why? Why no toys? Why nothing for yourself?" Ashley looked at him, not with pity, not with fear, but with a wisdom far too old for her small bones. She placed the notebook down and slowly, painfully, wrote, "I don't need toys. I need someone to sit with me." The world stopped. He didn't breathe. He couldn't. It wasn't material things she craved. It wasn't hunger she feared. It was abandonment. She didn't want distraction. She wanted presence. She didn't want things. She wanted companionship. Jackson looked away, blinking fiercely, as if ashamed to let her see the wetness gathering in his eyes. But she saw. She noticed every tremor in his jaw, every breath he fought to control. Here he was, a man who could buy skyscrapers, yachts, entire empires. Yet he had been bankrupt in the one thing she asked for: company. She lost sound, but she heard pain. She lost voices, but she became one. She lost love, but she still offered it. His heart, long frozen by disappointment and betrayal, cracked under the silent weight of her truth. Not a single sob escaped her. She didn't beg. She didn't demand. She simply shared the secret that ruled her life. "Don't leave me alone." And that broke him. Completely. Jackson turned back to her, eyes red, voice trembling even in silence. He had never made a promise in his life that felt sacred. But in that moment, one formed on his lips, heavy and unspoken. "I will not walk away from you." Jackson had spent 36 years building walls, brick by brick, around his emotions. He had mastered the art of silence, not because he didn't feel, but because he refused to. In boardrooms, he was unshaken. In losses, unbroken. In betrayal, untouched. People called him cold, ruthless, emotionless, and he believed it, until now. As he sat beside Ashley, her words echoing inside him like thunder in a hollow cave, "I don't need toys. I need someone to sit with me." Something broke. Something deep, old, and hidden. His eyes began to burn, not with anger, not with shame, but with truth. He turned his face slightly, trying to blink the feeling away. But Ashley saw. She always noticed, even in her silent world. She didn't need sound to sense sorrow. She didn't need words to feel wounds. She reached out her tiny hand, barely the size of his palm, and placed it gently on his sleeve. That touch. It wasn't grand, it wasn't dramatic, but it was pure. A child's hand, offering comfort to a man who had never been comforted. She picked up her notebook again. Slowly, lovingly, she wrote, "No rush, no fear." Then she turned it toward him. "If you are sad, I can sit with you." That was it. The final thread holding his composure snapped. He turned away, pressing his hands to his face. His shoulders trembled, not with power, not with rage, but with tears he had locked away for decades. He cried, silently, deeply, like a man witnessing his own soul for the first time. He did not cry because he was weak. He cried because, for the first time, he understood strength. Not the strength of wealth, success, or status, but the strength of a 5-year-old girl who had nothing, yet chose to give love. How could a child with no home, no voice, no protection offer him the very thing he had been starving for all his life? Presence, care, company. His mind flashed to every dinner he had eaten alone, every birthday uncelebrated, every achievement met by applause but never by understanding. He had money to buy 1,000 smiles, yet never found one that stayed. And here she was, a deaf child on a public bench, promising simply, "I will sit with you." No judgment, no expectation, just companionship. He lowered his hands slowly, face damp, breath unsteady. She didn't mock. She didn't stare. She simply sat beside him, exactly as she promised. In that still moment, Jackson felt something he had never felt in 36 years. Not pity, not sorrow, but healing. Slow, gentle, unseen. It was then he realized, love is not always loud. Sometimes it sits beside you, in silence. Jackson knew that leaving her on that bench would haunt him forever. He had walked away from business deals, from friendships, from promises. But this was different. Ashley wasn't just a moment. She was a turning point. She was a question to his soul. Will you walk away like everyone else, or will you stay just once? He didn't leave. He didn't even hesitate. That very night, his lawyers were called. Not for contracts, not for mergers, but for a guardianship request, the first act of humanity he had ever signed. Ashley entered his mansion quietly, her steps gentle, her eyes searching. No golden lights impressed her. No velvet furniture mattered. She only looked for one thing: Jackson. And he was there, always within sight, as if afraid she might vanish if he blinked. He hired the best sign language teachers, not for her alone, but for himself. He wanted to speak her language. He wanted to learn her world, even if it meant unlearning his own. He practiced every night, forming letters with shaky fingers. A-S-H-L-E-Y. She would smile quietly, placing her tiny hands over his to guide them. Doctors were brought, therapists too. She received hearing tests, health checkups, emotional care. But the greatest healing came not from professionals, but from presence, from breakfasts at the same table, from evening walks, from silent storytelling. The man who had once dined alone at golden tables now waited for a child to climb into her chair before taking a single bite. The mansion, once echoing with emptiness, now echoed with soft footsteps, tiny giggles, rustling pages, dancing shadows. Neighbors noticed a change. Every evening, Jackson and Ashley returned to that same park bench where it all began. No reporters, no cameras. Just a man in a tailored coat and a little girl with a notebook, speaking with hands and hearts. People whispered, "Is that the cold millionaire?" But the truth sat beside him, the little girl who warmed him. Ashley didn't just get a home. She gave Jackson something he never had: humanity. She taught him that love doesn't shout, it sits beside you, that care doesn't cost money, it costs time. He had spent his life collecting wealth, but she taught him the greatest currency: kindness. He had lived in a house, but she gave him a home. And so a message was born, not spoken, but lived. In a world too loud with judgment, be someone's quiet companion. Not every cry is heard. Some are felt. Not every heart speaks in words. Some speak in silence. Lesson: in a country of millions, no child should wait on a bench alone. Wealth means nothing if it cannot lift another soul.